This is our second conversion using the levels of saturation in Lightroom Classic. So once again, I will create a virtual copy. And with this virtual copy, instead of converting it just to black and white, I'm going to actually take the saturation slider and slide it all the way to the left. And once again, I get some kind of black and white, except it looks pretty flat. So here we can adjust the contrast by changing the temperature and tint. Remember, this image, the wall was very yellow on top, red on the bottom. His jacket is blue. We don't have too many other colors, I don't believe, do we? His pants are blue, but it's mostly red, orange, yellow, except his clothing. So I'll take the saturation completely out, and now if I change the temperature, because there's so much yellow, notice how much lighter the image is going to be, and you see all kinds of detail if you need to, or you can take all the blue, turn it towards the blue and basically take out all the yellow, and you will have a lot more deeper blacks, because mostly that image was very warm. So I will actually open up the yellows a little bit, and you might say, well, that's too light, and you're absolutely correct, but I'm going to adjust it. Now green and magenta also will change the levels of contrast, so I'll go ahead and bring my tint a little bit over to the left. Each image is going to be different, obviously, because you are probably not photographing bright orange red walls, so pay attention to your colors. So I got the basic contrast range, and now I'm going to redo the clarity. I don't want clarity yet. I'm going to open up the curve panel. I really like using the curve panel. In the curve panel, what I can do, I can lift up my blacks, make my blacks even a little bit flatter still. I can reduce my highlights if I wanted to, make them a bit flat. But then I will take a darker shadow and darken that shadow. So curve is all the way on the bottom left is our blacks, and as we go up it gets lighter gray, highlight white, and eventually pure white. So I'm going to darken my highlights, my shadows like about so, but then bring up the midtone about so. Notice I am creating an S-shaped curve, and I'll bring my highlights even further down because I don't want this really bright hat to be all that bright, so I'll bring it down like so. So now I have richer tonality overall. I can turn off and on my curve adjustment, so that was before and this is after. So I'm getting there. I'm not quite done yet. I'm going to still create, let's see here, I'll just readjust that a little bit more, darken it. There we go. I think that looks better. Okay, so then I will take my radial filter and do the same thing as before. I can still select the range of his hat and his face, like so, and I can add more clarity to his face and the hat. There he is, now he's popped out. Okay. And I'm going to darken the shadows just a little bit to make him a little bit darker. That looks better already. And I'll take the highlights, make them just a smidge lighter, like about so. And if you needed to do any other adjustments here, if you wanted to sharpen him a little bit more or anything else like that, I might actually just bring down my, that's too much. Just a little tiny little bit of difference in exposure. There we go. And now I'm going to take this radial filter and duplicate it. So right click and right click and duplicate. So now I have two radial circles that are exactly the same. I'm going to take this one down here. I'm going to hold the Option Alt key and drag it out somewhat because I want this jacket to be a little bit darker. And on this jacket, I'll bring down the exposure. And I'll bring down the highlights. So now his jacket is a bit darker. There's more levels of contrast right there. You decide by how much. Might pull back the exposure. Don't like the exposure so much. And sometimes you just need to try a little bit to see where it's taking you before you commit to the final adjustment. I'm going to actually bring back the clarity because I think the clarity was too high. That's what was making those shadows so much darker. There we go. That's, to me, is better. And I will create another radial filter. And with this radial filter, I'll create my own vignette. So I'll make a really big one, really big circle, really big filter, like so. I'm going to uncheck the invert, so therefore it's affecting all the outer area. And I'm going to, for one, darken the shadows. There we go. And I may readjust it, move it a little bit over here, darken the shadows like so. Maybe not quite so much. And then increase the clarity a bit. There we go. There we go. So then let's compare. Which one do you like better? For example, I'm going to select the first virtual copy. So that was our traditional black and white in Lightroom. And the second one was using the desaturation method. And I will press on the letter N to put me back in the survey view. And I'll press on the Tab key to hide my panels. And which one do we like better? I tend to like the desaturated adjustment better. I just have more tone in him. Here on the left, he's a little bit blown out, but this is of course subjective. Now, if I wanted to create a duotone of this, I could click on whichever version I liked better, and then I will go into my color grading. And in color grading, I could add just a smidge of warmth to the midtones. So you see it's a little bit warmer. So you could play around with this. You can go into the blues and greens and but try to stay in the range of closer towards the middle, because if you go to the outer edge, you get a really strong color transition. And I would rather that you stay a bit more subtle. So maybe like so. I'm going kind of for a little bit of a warmer look, but I may cool down my shadows just a smidge. So I may cool down my shadows. I may hold my shift key, so therefore it only will take me down towards the blue. It won't let me run around. And if I hold my Option key, then it also doesn't go so fast. The circle slows down basically. So like maybe just about there in the shadow. Okay, so that could be my duotone, or you could do a stronger duotone where you really have more blues and more warm tones in the mid-range and create a stronger duotone. So play around with it, but a duotone basically is a slightly toned black and white image.